But if God said tomorrow, put it on the market because you're going somewhere else, it would be hard, but we would have to be obedient. When I was a little girl, my mom would take me and my sister to the fairs, county fairs, state fair. My favorite part of the fair wasn't the rides or the food. It was the animal barns. I thought that the farm kids were the luckiest kids on the planet. They got to live the life that this city kid dreamed of. The life I got glimpses of when I visited my grandmother. My grandmother lived in the country. While she didn't have chickens or other animals, she did garden and preserve everything she possibly could. I always felt free and wild when I went to visit her. I would climb the trees, I would go exploring. It just felt like my element. I have a handful of memories from when I was very young and going to her mother's house. It was a farm. I remember my great aunt taking me out to the barn to collect eggs and me being afraid that the hens would be mad and peck me for taking them. When I became an adult, I joined the Army shortly after high school, met my husband, married, raised 3 homeschooled kids, and all the while we moved and moved. For 25 years, we lived everywhere from Germany to Alaska. Our favorite home during that time, though, was the place we called the farmhouse. It sat out in the country on about 60 acres with no neighbors to speak of. The kids could run and play. We hunted. We raised chickens. We had our first little homestead. And we knew that someday we wanted a place like this of our own. In 2013, we moved to our 18th home and final assignment of Army life, Redstone Arsenal in Huntsville, Alabama. 3 years later, Mr. Smith, Jeff, retired from the Army. At the time, the job that had been waiting for him was put on hold because of a government hiring freeze, so he took a contract job overseas for a year. While he was gone, I signed all the papers in duplicate and closed on our homestead, our forever home. We were finally planting roots. We bought a house with some land, a blank slate that would become our good life farm. I built a chicken coop, got our first chickens in years. And started gardening. Year after year, the projects and the homestead grew. We planted fruit trees, blueberries, blackberries. We got a tractor so I could do my favorite chore even better, mowing the pasture and worshiping and praying the whole time. It was my second most happy place. We got more chickens. I built more chicken coops. That led to new animal shelters, goats, mini donkey, mini mule, more goats. And then the gardens. Oh, the gardens. The garden started small, and then it grew, and it grew some more. And then there were 2 of them. Every year, more gardens, more to grow. And finally, my beautiful greenhouse. The Shima shed. All those years of army life and little flower pot gardens never gave me even an inkling of how deeply gardening would get into my soul. I never realized how closely you feel to our Creator when your hands are in the soil and the sun is on your shoulders and you work with all He created. I spent hours, days, weeks in the garden, having countless conversations with Him while I pruned the tomatoes, prayed for my family while I pulled the weeds, or lifted the needs of my YouTube friends up while I hunted for hornworms. There is so much more that grows in the garden besides cucumbers and beans. After we built our homestead, I would joke how this homestead is our 19th home and will be our last. I was never gonna move again, ever. You would find me someday keeled over on the tractor seat. I made that joke all the time. Then one day when I said it, I felt a whisper in my spirit. Shh, don't say that. I suddenly felt unsettled. Lord, how would I ever give up this homestead? This homestead is my dream. It's all I've ever wanted on this earth. Look at everything we have here. The fruit trees have just begun producing. But I still felt that unease, a catch in my spirit, when I would say we're never moving again. So I stopped making that joke. And one day I cried out in tears, Father, you know my heart. And you know how I love this homestead. But above all, I want to be obedient. And if you would have us sell everything and get a camper and be nomads, if that's what you wanted, I would do it to be obedient. Some time passed and life went on, though the roots we planted suddenly didn't feel so sturdy. Then a little while later, something happened. I can't explain it or even tell you when it started, but for years there was a place that I've always loved. When I would hear someone mention it, I would have this sense of homesickness and nostalgia strike me. That feeling you get when someone mentions your childhood home when you've been away for a really long time, a sort of sweet longing. But the thing is, I'd never been there. I wasn't even sure exactly where it was. I just knew that I longed for it. And having been an Army family, we have friends all over the country, including this area, that makes me pause every time. Was I out of my mind? Look at this beautiful life we have here in Alabama. It's a good life farm. I didn't say anything to Jeff, but I prayed. And I said, Father, I don't know why I want to be there. I don't even know how it would ever happen. Ever. It would have to be an absolute miracle. And you would have to see us through every single step of it. I put it in the Father's hands. And again, I didn't say a word to Jeff. 3 days later, without me having said a word to him, Jeff walked into the room and looked at me and said, let's do it. I shared this with a friend.
No way! No way! I am in tears! Oh my goodness! I don't even know what to say! I've got chills all over me! Yes, come on, come on!
A couple weeks later, I went on a trip to this place for the very first time. When we were an active duty Army family, we moved a lot. And every time we went someplace new, there was a feeling that I described as a sense of strangeness. Everything being unfamiliar and different and new. But what I discovered was that for the first time, I didn't feel that. It was a strange lack of strangeness. Instead, I felt like I'd come home. I had moments where I found myself in tears, overwhelmed with emotion. There is so much more to this story, and I will share more in the future. But I've been keeping a secret. One I can't keep any longer, and it's been really hard. At the end of 2022, we signed another set of papers. And when I said that things are going to start looking a little bit different, no, very different around here, it really couldn't be any more night and day. And I can't wait to share this next grand adventure with you all. As we go from a farm in Alabama to a homestead in the mountains of Arkansas.